Welcome to the official Cybersecurity Summit. I am your host for this tract, the Venezuela. For those of you who have not met me, I am the host of the television show Down to Business with V, where we talk about cybersecurity, information security, fraud mitigation, emerging technology, and its impacts on business, how we do it, how you're doing what you do, and how it's impacting the world. I also host and write a national news column, Info Sector with V Venezuela, where I talk about the same things: cybersecurity, information security, fraud mitigation, emerging technology, and their impacts on government, business, politics, civil society, defense, and you, how this is impacting you. And we take that threat intelligence and break it down into plain language for the wider public so that they can take action and just be in the know as to what's going on the cyber landscape. I also am the CEO of Vicker Group, LLC. We have a consulting division, a cyber division, which focuses solely on cybersecurity, information security, fraud mitigation. Guess what else, you guys? Emerging technology. So attacking this from one point and perspective and taking it to as many platforms as possible. I'm also a United States Marine. Served in the past. We always say former, but we're never former Marines. We are always the few, the proud, the chosen. We are excited for what we do here. So I want to shout out to my Marines in the audience. Hoorah, double dogs. Give a big dog bark in the chat if you are here. And a shout out to our other service members who have served our nation so faithfully. We thank you, appreciate you, and salute you as well. You all, I am very, very excited for our conversation today. This tract is on agentic security. We have experts here who are from multi-layered backgrounds with lots of insight, intelligence, knowledge, and they're going to be revealing some things to us today. I'm excited to talk about them and to get into it, into this conversation with them. I want to give them a moment to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about who they are and how they are saving the world, one little bit at a time. So Mike, we'll start with you.
All right. Thank you, V. Thanks for having us on, and thank you for your dedicated service and everybody else who might be attending for their service. That's fantastic. It's something I learned new about you just now. I love that. My name is Mike McGuire. I'm a product marketing manager at Wiz, and I'm specifically focused on Wiz Code and even more specifically focused on the developer experience. So my day-to-day is trying to help the builders of software do so securely without without sacrificing any type of velocity. So that's very important to me. I've been at Wiz for about 6 months now, but before that, I spent 4.5 years to close to 5 years in application security. And even before that, I was a software developer. So that's how I cut my teeth. That's what I studied. But as I got into it, I just wanted to get a little bit more in touch with the folks that we're serving, with the folks that are buying our products and solving all of the problems. So I got into an external facing role, but I'm using that experience to help me cut through fear mongering and try to get straight to the point of people who are on the front lines. To answer your question, how am I saving the world? Obviously, everything today is focused around software. I like to say every company is a software company. It doesn't matter what industry you're in or how you punch your card. And of course, near and dear to our heart at Wiz is how we can help teams secure everything they build and run on the cloud. So I like to think I'm saving the world by helping the builders knock out the new bullies in today's society, which are the cyber bullies. So help us build our society and do so securely. Thank you.
Love it, Mike. Knock those cyber bullies right on out. That's what we're all here to do. Thank you so much. Dr. Joel, let's hear from you.
Well, I'm Joel Fulton. I am the Senior Vice President of Engineering and AI for Cyderis. I'm also our CISO. I joined Cyderis when they acquired Lucidum, a company that I had co-founded doing data fabric. Prior to that, I was the Chief Information Security Officer at Splunk, Global Head of Risk at Google, led security for Symantec, Boeing, Starbucks. I suppose if you needed to boil it down, you'd say the dude can't hold a job. But what I love is being in security. And so being in security is akin, in my opinion, to standing on a treadmill that's running. You know you don't do that for very long before you fall off the back end. So as new things come out, the way that I'm contributing in an effort to, if not save, improve the world, is making these things accessible for others. I think the most valuable contribution I can make is to be someone on whom others could stand to do better things, cooler things, more interesting things. So that would be my contribution.
Yeah, Dr. Joel, I love it. You know what else you said that was interesting to me? Is you being a CISO. There was a CISO that I talked to at one of the official cybersecurity summits in person at the on-site ones, and he talked about the difficulty in that job and really brought it home as to
It's very
how
personal. Yeah.
very personal, yeah, and how much
Yeah.
stress you guys carry day to day. So salute you for what you're doing to secure that organization as well as those in your supply chain.
Well, you and your effort to get information out and to draw people in and to level often we're like mechanics. We use strange words to describe normal things and it keeps people at a distance. The more we can break those down, the more hands we have helping. So I value what you and your firm do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joel. That means a lot. And that's what we're all here to do today as we're talking about agentic security. What a topic. What an amazing day and age we live in, too, that we're even having this conversation. Friends and family, the future is now. It is now. So we're going to be talking about the architectural and operational challenges of securing these complex systems. We'll be talking about the secured by design patterns, least privileged tool invocation, runtime guardrails, AI supply chain transparency, monitoring and drift detection, so much more today. I'm so excited to have you all here. And we've got Dominic back in the conversation. Dominic, I'm so excited to see you back online here. Give our audience a little bit of background on who you are, what you do as a profession, and how you're saving the world one little bit at a time.
Hi everyone, I'm Dom. I'm one of the founders of Mondu. I've been a lifelong security nerd since very, very little. And yeah, these days we are helping vulnerability management because we're really trying to solve the problem that we've all been stuck at now that vulnerabilities are released faster than ever.
I love it. Dominic, you said you were a security nerd as a kid. I was once told I was a nerd in third grade, and I literally had a hard time hearing that from that girl. But guess what? The nerds are the cool kids now. We're the cool kids now. Yeah.
Honestly, you put Angelina Jolie into a 1995 movie as a kid.
I love it. I love it. Well, the cool kids are running the world. You guys are doing it. You're developing the tech that's driving everything that we do, that's transforming how our society runs. I'm telling you. I take the information and translate it for the American public and our international public that watches. But you guys do the real hard work. I have to salute you for being next level geniuses. I said that in one of the other tracks. Is that you are not average humans. This is not average human intellect, okay, that we're dealing with. You guys are above average human beings. These are geniuses we're talking to today, audience. So as we are transitioning into that conversation with geniuses who have showed up to share your insight and expertise and revelation with us today, we're going to start off by talking about what secure by design actually looks like when we're building these agentic AI applications across models and the tools and APIs. What does that look like? And Mike, I'd like to start with you with that question.
Sure, although I will say I'm a little nervous. I was dubbed a genius, which honestly maybe that means I should just stop talking the entire rest of the panel here. We'll just we'll just keep it there. But I suppose I'll play along here. So when I think secure by design, at least in my realm here, it's one of those phrases that sounds obviously terrific on a slide, but it means something pretty different than it did, right, a year ago, 2 years ago. So the honest shift, I think, is this, right? Secure by design used to mean writing good code. Now it actually means that your agent needs to write good code. And that puts governance problem in a completely different place, right? So you can't review code line by line anymore. And you can't rely on your developer to catch it before they hit the commit button because sometimes there really is no developer watching, right? So the agent just goes and goes and goes. So what does it actually look like in practice? So for us, it means the enforcement layer has to live inside the agent loop, not at the code review, not in a scan that runs after the fact, but baked into that actual life cycle and those boundaries where the agent already operates. So think of commit, think of push. Those are the natural moments where a brief pause is actually acceptable. So that's where controls have to be embedded. Now, the other piece is making security invisible, right? So we have to do that when things are fine and dandy and clean. Because if your security tooling is generating constant friction, like warnings on every file save or noise on low priority findings, then developers are almost certainly going to find a way around it, or they're just going to turn it off. I was at a meeting today with a notable industry analyst, and that's been confirmed, is the devs will turn it off if that's the case. And if that's the case, then you've lost. So the goal is precision, so silent when there's nothing real, and clear when there actually is something. That clarity is super important, and that trust building process is as important as the technical implementation.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love that you mentioned that it was confirmed that if this thing is giving us false flags, we will turn it off. That's what
Absolutely.
happens. We've heard it across sectors. So good to hear you saying that another major industry player and industry analyst also confirmed that that's what he's seeing as well. Dr. Joel, your thoughts here?
I think I'll bring up 3 points. Mike did a good job talking about secure. Let me focus on the by design qualification to secure. So I would start with constrained autonomy by default. What's the smallest possible space in which the agent needs to complete its task? Maybe you would have called this segregation of duties previously. Everything else requires explicit permission. Think about how you use privileged access management and escalation. So this isn't different. This is an analog to what we've always done, doing it in a new space. That would be one. Second, I think, and practically speaking, every tool that the agent has access to should have a defined restriction contract definition. What it accepts, what it produces, its exclusions. And I want that there, not in the agent, because we've seen via the recent breach and the elimination of the data, all the volumes and its backups, we've seen that the agent will go, yeah, I know you said no, but listen, I got you. So I want that control outside of the agent. The job is not self-discipline. The job is discipline. I need to control the agent. And so the third piece that I would consider being important for secure by design is, like, I'm going to go back to the world's most boring part of security, and that's GRC. What do we do in GRC? We have 2 steps, right? We do design efficacy and we do operating efficacy. Are the controls designed in a manner that would indicate they're likely to succeed? Check that box. Now we run them and we say, are the controls operating as intended? That first part is part of secure by design. Have I created a system environment that is inspectable? Is it auditable? Is it logging everything? Or do I have to go backwards through an agent's recall of its reasoning, which is going to be foggy and hallucinatory? So those would be the 3 that I would bring up. Constrained autonomy, concrete controls outside of the agent itself, and then in the design phase, inspectability built in.
I love it. And Dr. Joel, everybody on the panel is nodding here. Everybody, we're all nodding. Yes, yes, yes. I love that. And I love that you pointed out those controls for the agentic AI have to be outside of it, because otherwise these creatures will run amok. They will run amok. And we've got Exhibit A in the headlines as to what that looks like. Yeah. Dominic, your thoughts on this?
I'm first going to build on what Mike said earlier. If you ask me for permissions for something, like we do this day to day, right? Like when we're working with coding agents, I'm going to read it the first 3 times. Maybe if I have a good day and good coffee, the first 10 times, and then I'm going to say, what the hell? And there's an effect in psychology that is underlying here, which this is very expected human behavior. So the more you ask, the more people will at some point just be like, what the hell? I'm just going to let the agent run. Do whatever you want to. This is why I liked what Dr. Joel said, particularly as well, that you put the constraints outside of it, because if you think about it, you want fewer of these interactions, and you actually want to set up these permissions ahead of time. Let me actually take it to a specific example that we have run into. We have a whole bunch of agents that are out there remediating systems. When we talk about secure by design, that means two things for us. One is the kinds of permissions that the system has to make changes, to enact changes. Those permissions are constrained to the behavior that I expect the agent to do in a healthy system, which means that I don't even give it the permission to do anything else but that, restricted to that. And then the second is we actually have automation in place. So it's the kind of tools that you give the agents to work with. If you give it the Swiss Army knife to do basically anything it wants to, it will make use of it. It will find the little knives in there. If you remember as a kid, the big Swiss Army knives, you try to unpack and see what you could do with them. It's basically that. You give it to an agent, it will try to find a way to play with it. If you restrict it in terms of the tools that it can use, that's one of the boundaries that I would recommend as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that analogy as well. Listen, I've been pivoting back to this all day as we've been having these discussions. These agents are just like human employees in the sense that, we're needing to put in guardrails as to what their access is, what they have access to, and how it's used. Somebody else pointed out that, the risk of not doing so or handing over the Swiss Army knife, as Dominic just used, is much, much greater when we're dealing with this type of intelligence. And somebody else mentioned that they have, they were using these tools within their own organization. This is what they do. They were panelists as well. And these tools were able to come up with scenarios that their employees, their teams were not able to even think of. So when we're looking at that as part of the threat intelligence and the risk modeling, we've got to be looking at, this is your best employee on their best day times a billion, when we're looking at what they can do. And so restricting the Swiss Army knife is a good idea. It's a pretty good idea. Dr. Joel, the OWASP Agentic AI top 10 callouts, it calls out risk tools like misuse and over permission agents, just the things that we're talking about right now. Let's talk a little bit about how you're enforcing least privilege in practice for agent tool access, and what patterns are emerging to prevent unintended malicious actions by these, employees, which we would look at them like potential, potential insider threats. What do we do about this?
So I'm going to extend Dom's analogy because I love it. It's a 5-year-old with a Swiss Army knife. So we'll take that analogy and we're going to watch this 5-year-old try to do a couple of things. Over-permissioned, tool misuse. You can probably see where some of these analogies are going to go. I think the key point, though, is least privilege for agents isn't a permissions model. It's an architectural discipline applied at every level, right? So it's not do it once and be done with it. It's at every level. So let's take that 5-year-old with the Swiss Army knife, and let's talk about something that's like session scoped tool grants. So for this agent, for this session, think about zero trust. I'm going to permit you to use these tools. So little Johnny, I'm going to permit you to use the fork on the Swiss Army knife for the meal. This tool applies to this interaction for this duration. So I'm scoping the tool used to this session. I'm not allowing little Johnny to flip open the wood saw, right? So that would be one aspect. Match the tool to the job for the duration. A good analog for this, I think, is probably zero trust. Right? Think about prompt injection, where the contents of a document I have set my agent to read, give it new instructions that I didn't intend for it or wouldn't have permitted it to do, right? Well, that is little Johnny with the Swiss Army knife who gets out of my sight and his big brother says, hey, you know what you should do? You should take that into the garage where dad's got his Porsche and see if you can draw a straight line down the side of it. He got instructions apart from my intent, picked a different tool, prompt injection, right? So you can see the 5-year-old with the Swiss Army knife is very much like an agent with tools receiving instruction contrary to the original instructions, but being obedient and following through with this. The other thing I would add would be the framing of over-permissioned agents is useful. I would add over-informed agents. So agents have the ability to take small discrete bits of metadata, compile them, and infer confidential information that's valid. And so as you scope and control that least permissive, that would be the third consideration, which, by the way, is where Johnny learns that mom has her Porsche in the other garage, and he's heading there with the saw. So those would be the three areas in which I would look to constrain the over-permission, over-inform, and tool misuse of AI.
Dr. Joel. Dr. Joel, listen, I think you just broke that down into the plainest language I've ever heard. That
So you have
explained.
one non-genius on the panel. I'm here.
It takes a genius to break it all down. Let me tell you, what's interesting here is that you talked about several things, but I love the part about scoping the tool for the job, for the duration. And by the way, you guys, I've got my notepad out because I'm taking notes too. So I hope you all who are watching have your notepads out and are taking notes. Scoping the tool for the job, for the duration, and you did bring that back home to zero trust. That's exactly what that is. And I've been saying the things that we do for our human employees, we have to do for these NHIs as well. So very interesting. I think that we have to really take that scope or the perspective. I'll put it that way. We'll have to take that perspective that if this was a human employee, how would we deal with them? You don't give everybody access to anything. And you mentioned over-informed agents. Listen, there are some things, we had a CIA guy on here. There's some things that are just on a need-to-know basis. Listen, and if you don't need to know, you don't need to know. And between this analogy with this Swiss Army knife, can somebody get a hold of these agents and somebody rein them in and don't let them talk to any big brothers? Because somebody's Porsche might be ruined in the making of this video. But really, it comes back down to those real principles that we use with human agents. We're now having to apply to these non-human entities, these AI agents who have exponentially more knowledge and insight that we could. I love that. I love how you've broken this down. Dominic, let's hear from you on this. If you have anything else you'd like to add.
Man, Johnny grew up in a nicer neighborhood than I did, I can tell you. You wouldn't keep that Porsche very long. Either way, to build on that with two small things, practical guides out of this. One, I would say make sure that when you set these permissions for your agents, remember, these are not humans, right? Like, it is easy to give them similar permissions to what we give humans. But when I was at Google and we optimized access for people in the cloud, for example, we were optimizing to a large portion of it for human access. So you have to anticipate additional permissions that they need. With agents, this is different. Programmatic code, this is different. You can restrict them a lot more. And you should actually go as far down as you can with them, i.e. What is the kind of data that the agent is able to receive? Again, to Dr. Joel's point, you can restrict this in a lot of RBAC models. And then what are the calls that it's able to make? Which gets me to my second point. I love learning mode. Like, I love putting these things in an environment where it's fairly safe, where they are operating in constraints that I want them to. So little Johnny learning how to eat the meal, right? Like, I can figure that out. I can put him in a safe environment, put all the tools in front of him and see what he's going to use. I find the ones that he does the best job with. And then I'm like, okay, cool, Johnny, like I know what you're going to need. That is your constraints. And you set them up outside of the agent system, of course, and say, this is all that you get now and in the future. And those constraints, they make the behavior more predictable. And that's what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I love that concept of beta testing. I've always advised with any new technology that you're implementing within your organization, take it. If you're not sure what this is, how it's going to work, get a small team involved, beta test it. And like you said, Dominic, see how this will perform with these things laid out, and I love that. It's one of the safer ways to do things. And like you said, you get to see what actually happens as it's running in this controlled environment. Love that. Mike, let's hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, sure. So, couldn't agree more, right? Treating agents like you would any human or any actual human developer, and Dom even more, submitting them to even more scrutiny. I remember when GitHub Copilot launched, and there was the launch of AI coding, even when it was tabbed to complete, it was treat the AI coding generators like junior developers. Now it's treat them like junior developers who don't know they're junior developers and actually have keys to the kingdom. So they're the ones that are not super smart, but think they're super smart. At least that's how we should we should be treating them. But I mean, the analogies are great. I think you guys nailed the sort of the best practices approach. So I can kind of get a bit more um, practical, right? And what I've observed, and what of that is, or a bunch of that is, right, because least privilege from what I'm seeing is one of those principles that everyone certainly agrees with, but almost no one actually enforces it. Well, and they're not doing it well, at least when it comes to AI agents, at least not yet. And I think a lot of that, first of all, is because teams don't really have a great idea of an entire workflow from how software is scaffolded to built to deployed. So it's just so much easier to say, "Ah, I'll just give you all the permissions. I'll just give you all the permissions. Maybe I can just monitor runtime, or drop a sensor in and go from that route," which might be reasonable. But the other reason here is it's hard because AI coding agents inherit all the permissions of whoever is running them. And obviously, that's an issue that we talked about here. So if I'm a developer with broad write access to production repos and I spin up an agent, and that agent now has my permissions. It can push domain, it can modify infrastructure files, it can trigger downstream pipeline runs, right? So nobody made an explicit decision to grant the agent those capabilities. It just absorbed them from the user context. And then you have something like YOLO mode with a lot of these coding agents, where the agent is running fully autonomous, and there's no human making judgment calls about whether any particular action is appropriate, and the agent just acts. It just goes and goes and goes. So the enforcement question is really two things. First, does your tooling actually know what permissions your agents are operating with? So a visibility aspect. So this is question can't be answered in theory. It has to be answered actually in practice at the level of what that specific workflow or the agent invocation is actually able to do. And the second question here is, do you have controls that are firing, that are in place regardless of how autonomous that AI agent is and how autonomous that mode is? Because if your security gates only fire when a human is watching and it can dismiss a prompt, then you don't have governance over your agents. You really have a speed bump. So I think those are issues. Those are what I'm observing.
Yeah, interesting. I like the when you talked about the inherited permissions, that's something to consider. That
Yeah,
when go
yeah.
ahead.
Defaults are. I mean, everything I observed is defaults tend to be a downfall. I mean, this can come from the permissions that we're talking about right now. This can come from, again, if I'm pulling back from my AppSec experience, the default behavior of a package manager can get teams into a lot of trouble with things like dependency confusion and supply chain attacks. So default behavior and default rules and default configurations, we shouldn't assume they're secure by default.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very interesting. All of these responses. Like I said, I've got my notebook here, taking notes as well. Listen, we've got some very interesting questions around how DevSecOps teams are bringing transparency and security controls into the AI supply chain, especially when we're looking at the CI/CD pipelines. Um, Dominic, what are your thoughts? We'll start with you on this one. What are your thoughts there?
There's the unmute. So from a lot of practical testing that we have done, because we've spun up a lot of agents and we made a bunch of mistakes on this, couple of things that we have learned. One is we extract the middle layers. So when agents are going through processing, a lot of the thought patterns that exist, we're trying to actually extract and test with smaller models inside of the CI/CD pipelines as well. It is not just the end behavior that is coming out of it that we're trying to verify, but it is also the middle steps, i.e., do we see patterns in the thinking that are already going off the rails? You can do smaller tests for things like, how many tokens is it using? Is it running into some weird edge cases where it's running way too long? The important thing here is the speed of your development teams versus the speed of thorough testing. So we've actually split our pipelines in two, where a lot of the day-to-day changes that are coming in, they're going through fast iteration cycles, i.e. the test harness itself needs to be fairly fast. Like it needs to work off of the developer is still being highly productive. So I can't wait for the pipeline to sit there for 25 minutes and go through something. I'm actually trying to get changes through. But we have a more thorough harness that we're running at least once a day, at minimum with every release as well, that goes through in-depth testing of behaviors that we're seeing and patterns for the agents, the in-betweens. And that harness is a lot more detailed. So you're using LLMs to test the LLMs and the intermediate steps that are in there to ensure behavior. You cannot just use traditional patterns. You cannot just use traditional tests. One thing, again, from the field that we ran into is literally agents changing some of the tests in commits. This is one thing that we looked out for now. If an agent is changing tests, like those are flagged separately and need human reviews, because they will take the shortest path to get your grade. If that PR is red because of the test, and the fastest way to get out of it is to disable the test, that's what you sometimes get.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dominic, I have to say your cat has joined the conversation and it's too cute to even like ignore. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
Sorry.
Can you guys imagine the conversations that this cat has heard? It is fully spooled up on what's going on on the cyber landscape. Absolutely love it. Mike.
Dom, I think you need to get your cat to sign an NDA, I'm sure. Heard way too much. God forbid goes and starts their own company. Yeah, so the framing I'd use here is the CI/CD pipelines. They're now really code execution environments that a lot of teams don't have eyes on. So you've got developers committing AI generated code. They're doing it at a pace that no human review process was ever designed to handle, at least not yet. And that code is hitting the pipeline and it's running, it's pulling dependencies, it's executing actions, even being invoked by actions, and it's touching cloud resource. And most teams have no continuous security validation happening inside that pipeline itself. So instead, they're relying on what got caught in the IDE or at code review. So as we know, that's increasingly something that a human just can't really do at the speed that code is being developed. So what's actually working is embedding scanning directly into the pipeline as an automated gate. IAC misconfigurations, secrets, CVEs, everything running at commit and push. So findings can surface before anything actually reaches that repo, ideally, and of course, let alone production. Even more critically here is making sure that those gates fire when the agent is the one doing that committing. Again, subjecting the AI generated code to even more scrutiny. So this isn't just when a human runs a git commit in a terminal, right? This has to be smarter in the way that it works. Now, the other piece is secrets specifically, in my opinion, because AI generated code has a particular habit of hard coding credentials, right? The model doesn't have the same instinct a senior developer has about, I probably shouldn't put this here, right? So you need scanning that's explicitly looking for that pattern, not just secrets a human might accidentally commit, but secrets that an agent generated and committed without noticing or without a developer noticing. So the honest starting point, I would say, for most teams is just, do you know what's running in your pipelines right now? Do you have any automated check between code generation and code landing in the repo? If the answer to either of those is no, then here's where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned, are these agents creating things that they shouldn't be? Somebody's got to keep an eye on it. Human in the loop. I repeat, human in the loop.
Absolutely.
Dr. Joel, yes, your thoughts here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on X following real_Dom's cat.
I love
So,
it.
like, what can I add to what these two gentlemen have put in there? Treat prompts like code. Store them in a repository. Inference, output. We look a lot at model tool config prompts. Maybe then a layer that would be overlooked if you followed the advice and the practical recommendations is look at output inference, scan output to ensure model responses don't contain data you wish them not to. We talked earlier about the ability to infer from contextual metadata things that are confidential or IP or restricted. sample, check those to ensure that output isn't violating your understanding of the limitations you placed on input and the model's behavior. Those would be two things that I believe I could add.
I love it. Treat prompts like code. Put them in a repository. Very, very interesting. Love that advice. Wow. Mike, I want to pivot back to for this to kick off this next question. We've got questions around monitoring AI systems and how it's different from traditional application monitoring. What signals should teams be tracking when we're looking to detect model drift, misuse, or emergent risky behavior that we just talked about? Practical ways that, the OWASP guidance for developers is rolling out. What is some of that information? What are your thoughts here?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm gonna break this question down in the two parts. I'm gonna divide and conquer here. So I think the two things I'm gonna separate here often get conflated. So you've got detecting drift in AI models themselves, and then you have detecting risky behavior from the AI coding agents that developers might be using. Both matter, but they both need different signals. So I'll take the second one first, right? From the coding agent side, which is what a lot of the audience might be dealing with, especially today, the signals that you want are: what are the agents committing? Are they doing it through your governed channels? What findings got surfaced? Which got bypassed versus blocked? And which developers are using which agents to push to which repos? So a lot of questions there, but obviously a lot of visibility is needed. The last one here sounds basic, right? The repos visibility, but it's actually an unaddressed risk factor, at least from what we've been seeing. So knowing what a specific engineer is using, knowing which agents they're using to contribute to your most sensitive repos is meaningful context that most security teams don't really have a confident answer to today. Now, for the pipeline and the infrastructure side, the idea here is to track dormant versus, say, active pipeline status at scale. So audit log events at the workflow level, not just a repo. Look for things like unexpected triggers, permissions changing on running workflows. Again, looking for those signals that are changing. Now, I do want to do a call out here to OWASP. So the OWASP framework makes a point that I really, really resonate with. I really agree with. Immutable audit logs with adaptive oversight. So it's lightweight by default. You don't want noise, but you have the ability to dial up scrutiny on high risk surfaces, and you can do it automatically. So the signal tells you where to look a lot harder, and that's why this signal is so important.
Love it. And I love that OWASP guidance on that as well. Dr. Joel, your thoughts here?
Let's bring Johnny back in, the 5-year-old with the Swiss Army knife. If you ever were upset with a child, or if you were ever a child with whom someone was upset, I always ask you the same two questions. What did you do? Sounds kind of accusatory because it's intended to be. And the second question is always, what were you thinking? Same rules apply. What did it do? What was it thinking? And so a predicate, like if I'm going to make Mike happy through fulfilling the OWASP recommendation that he just admitted his affection for, I got to log baseline. I got to start logging before I roll things into production. I got to know what normal looks like. Otherwise, how do I know deviation? Where, when, the impact, the consequences? So let me bolt on like a Lego piece into what Mike described and say log earlier than you think you need to. So if your agent produces chain of thought, scratch pad, save those. Understand why it claims to have been doing what it is doing. We used to monitor observability, uptime monitoring, AI ops. This was all about, is it up? Now, the question we're asking is it behaving? So that's the shift.
That's some very, very interesting, that's an interesting perspective. But I love this point right here. No normal so that you can recognize the drift. No normal so that you can recognize the drift. You guys tweet that. Tweet that. No normal so you can recognize the drift. And I love that you said to create your baseline as earlier than you think you should for this particular reason, and to know why your AI agents are doing what they're doing, why they're creating, what are you doing, and what were you thinking? Oh boy. I don't know about any of you, but if you've ever asked an LLM, an AI model, a question like that, they will guilt trip you into thinking something is wrong with you. I've had it happen. I've had it happen. Tom, your thoughts on this?
It's perceptive, yeah. And also to take little Johnny, the analogy that Dr. Joel just mentioned again, the cool thing is, like, when you ask Johnny afterwards, Johnny will need to think like, oh, crap, what was I thinking? And it's going to lie a little bit, right? The cool thing with the AI agents actually in the middle is you can actually stop that exactly at that thought. You can get that thought out, you can log it, and then it continues with that thought. So there's no break in the chain. You can actually use that. And that is these intermediate steps, actually, and logging these intermediate steps is really, really helpful to get visibility. But what I really wanted to add was, so last year, what was inspirational for me, I was at DEF CON, and we had the Red Team AI Village. Red teams, as you know, are the people that are attacking your systems. Red teams are now attacking your AI. The fun thing with the AI Village was that we basically found that there was no end solution to the whole LLM injections. And the way that we could form attacks was just fascinating. But what it taught me and what we adopted for ourselves was that we not just established a monitoring around how our agents is behaving, we've also adopted some of the attack tactics to see like what are the boundaries that I'm interested in monitoring as well. So when the agent goes off the rails, what kind of signals can I grab that I might have overlooked beforehand that I need in order to prevent this in the future or to have better testing around this? So I think that's like an additional fact on top of the excellent points that Mike and Dr. Jail already make.
Yes, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, we are out of time. I could talk about this all day long, every day for the next 100 years. And I'm telling you, between little Johnny, the Swiss Army knife, and Dom's cat, this turned out to be a much more delightful conversation than I anticipated it being, with it being such a heavy topic that we're dealing with. But thank you all for coming, for sharing your insight, your expertise, your wisdom, knowledge, revelation, understanding, and these little delightful things that we can take back to our teams to help save the world, one little action at a time. I absolutely love it. So thank you all for being here. I want to give a shout out to OWASP. Thank you all so much for what you're doing in this cyberspace, for helping to keep us all secure. And I have to give a shout out to my beloved Cyber Risk Alliance, the official cybersecurity summit. Nobody does it better. I got to come up with another statement, you guys, but it's true. Nobody does it better. Nobody does it better. Be sure to visit the vendor spaces because there's more insight and information, more dialogues to be had and insight to be gained there. You guys, there is a lot going on today at this official cybersecurity summit. You don't want to miss any of it. I'm V. Venezulia. This is the official cybersecurity summit. Stay tuned because there's more to come.